Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the Inside Out podcast. I'm your host, El Felix, better known as Linton Felix, so my mama don't get mad that I'm ashamed of my name, but it's all good. I'm El Felix. I'm joined today by four guests. Our fourth member, he's getting his computer situation together, but I'll go down the line and introduce everybody. The top of your screen is my man, Mike Manley, aka Pretty Eyed Mike, the original Ohio player. Say what's up, Mike.
What's happening, everybody?
Word. After that, my man Jamie Espinal, hailing from Providence, Rhode Island, but residing in Virginia, representing University of Rhode Island and everything New England. Say what's up, Jamie.
What up? What up?
What up? And most importantly, one of my mentors from my illustrious years at Clark Atlanta University, CAU, stand up. My mentor, advisor, teacher, friend. We call him Uncle B, but most people call him Dr. Brian Bentley. How you doing, Dr. Bentley?
Doing well, man. How's everybody doing?
We're doing good. We're waiting for our fourth member, my man Ed. He'll be here soon whenever he jumps in. We'll put him on the screen. He'll say what's up and we'll get this moving. But while we're here, we want to let everybody know that the show consists of basketball talk. It's mainly basketball. We'll throw in some football, a little bit of baseball here and there throughout the upcoming episodes. I'm just super excited to be doing this, especially with my guys right here. But my younger brother, D. Felix, would normally be the host, but because his son is a top tier AAU basketball player, shout out to my nephew G. Felix doing his thing, 12 years old, 6'2". We breed him like that around here. He's busy at the AAU tournament, so he might pop in later on, but in the future, he'll be the co-host along with all our other guests. So with all that said and done, let's jump into some topics. The first thing we want to do is we'll normally have some deep discussions, but today being our first episode, we're going to just have some fun, let everybody get to know us and see what we're about. So our first topic that we're going to jump into quick, which one do you think you like? Let's start with, give us a little bit of your own sports history, like your own personal basketball, baseball history. We'll start with you, Jamie.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, growing up in Providence, Rhode Island, I grew up in the West End Community Center. Moms used to drop me off first thing in the morning, and that's where I was until she picked me up like 6 o'clock in the evening. So I pretty much lived in the community center.
Yeah, I know a lot of cats who did.
Yeah, and we just went to Buckland Park and played basketball. They had the field right there, so we had the baseball too. And of course with that big outfield out there, we played a lot of football. So I played everything. But when it came to organized, I played rec league basketball for the West End, and that kind of made me just fall in love with basketball. And so, and then all of a sudden I saw the little signs for Elmwood Little League. And so I signed up for baseball and found out that was incredible too. And it just became a way of pretty much my mom just keeping me into something, and, growing up in New England, it's avid Red Sox, Celtics, Patriots, like all day long. And growing up, they were all pretty bad. And
I can remember it was terrible for a long time. Well, not the Celtics, but the Red Sox and the Patriots. The Patriots more so. The Red Sox were always kind of there. They never were going to win, but at least they were competitive. But the Celtics were good, but the Patriots they had nice uniforms.
and those weren't even that good either. But then, that's pretty much it, man. I just grew to love sports. It just kept me motivated, and when it came to playing high school basketball, baseball, teachers would often remind me like, "Oh, so you're on the basketball team, huh? Or oh, you like baseball? Oh yeah, so you might want to finish that assignment,
Everybody knew.
It kept me.
Because I remember you were the starting point guard were you point guard or shooting guard on the classical high school basketball team, right?
Guard, but
guard.
Yeah.
Those were good, man. I'm gonna date myself, but I was supposed to play basketball, but back then I was a rebel without a actual clue. I don't know why. I messed up with the grades. I did the tryouts, and then I was just like, oh, my grades are terrible. I'm not going to be on the team. So I just said, cut it out. The most I did was play soccer in high school.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was nice though. I was nice with it.
I remember.
Appreciate it. Now let's go over to Uncle B. Let's know a little bit about your personal sports history, things you did. If either you played growing up, cheering for teams or whatnot.
Yeah, actually, I was a huge sports fan growing up. I love basketball, baseball, football, boxing, pretty much all the sports. Growing up, we played football and basketball like every day, especially during the summertime from sun up to sundown. I mean, we just played. Watched all of the NBA finals, watched all of the Super Bowls. I remember missing one Super Bowl since I've started watching the Super Bowls. First Super Bowl I remember watching was and I'm about to date myself, was the one in 78, Dallas and Denver. First one in the Superdome. But
only Mike was alive then, right?
I'm sorry?
Only Mike was alive then.
Yeah, you got.
I was about 2. I think you were I was about 2.
Wow. But yeah, just growing up, playing sports, watching sports, just was into everything. Back in the day when you had like live boxing come on Saturday on ABC Wide World of Sports.
Yep.
I mean, you can just watch boxing, not having to pay-per-view. You can watch Sugar Ray Ali
I remember
fight. So yeah, just growing up, just a fan of all sports, and became a Steeler fan back in the.
That's the interesting thing. That's what before we got just full clarity for everybody. Before we started the show, we were doing a little just green room chit chat, and Uncle B mentioned that he was Steelers fan, and it's always been funny to me because Jamie and I were having a conversation, and Mike having a pre-conversation about cheering for the teams that you grew up in the community you grew up in, and he is a case in point. Grew up in New Orleans, and you're a Steelers fan. Why were you a Steelers fan?
Well, I mean, again, just watching different sports, because at the time the Saints were
terrible.
Well,
yes, they were.
Yeah, they were pretty bad. They had some good moments, but they would always come up. So, again, watching sports, right? So watching the Steelers. So I just became a Steeler fan. I just latched on to the Steelers, but I always had love for the Saints. But the Steelers were my favorite team.
Yeah, because and also around that time, you got to remember, we're in an era where we could, like, Jamie's you're streaming the Celtics games right now.
I am. I'm peaking. I don't know why, because they're losing. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
But imagine, no, I'm not. I'm just saying to make my point. Like, wherever you're at now, you can still root for your home team because they're on TV. But in the 70s, the Steelers were on TV because they were good.
They were good. Yeah.
On NBC or whatever. So if you're a young kid growing up, you're going to be like, oh, I like the Steelers because you saw them often. Like, I was almost a 49ers fan because they were always on TV.
Always.
Same time, the same thing with the Bulls. Like, Michael Jordan had that effect on people because, he was on TV a lot. That's great. That's great. Now,
thank God I didn't become a Dallas fan.
What? Say what?
I said, thank God I didn't become a Dallas fan.
Okay. I thought you said I also became a Dallas fan. I was
no.
You greedy. But okay, appreciate it. Next, going on to my man, Pretty Eye Mike, aka Mike Manley.
So I grew up in Ohio, Northeast Ohio, and I'm instantly offended by anybody who says they're a Steelers fan. First and foremost, I'm gonna throw that out there right now because we'll probably have some problems later on in the show. But that no disrespect, you know what I mean. But
people always say that when they're about to disrespect you too.
Exactly. Sports in Ohio is, at least in high school, it's as big as academics. I mean, you go to some of these schools and they, at the time, they had AstroTurf, they had lights, they had stadiums. I mean, people were showing up as if it was a college game or a pro game. High school sports was big. And for me, I grew up playing high school sports. I wasn't particularly good at any of them, but I still played. But at the same time, I saw that that didn't get past me. So in any case, I grew up in Akron, Ohio, and that obviously LeBron, that's his hometown. I get it, but there's others that came out of that area. Yeah. For when I was in high school, Mike Vrabel was in that area, and he was. So there's a lot of athletes came out of there. One of my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Again, the Midwest.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Yeah, so I knew people that was in the league that played in the league, and it was important. But for me, I grew up a Cleveland sports fan, and that's one of the most terrible things that you could possibly be. Because, and I tell you what, the Cleveland sports fans are not only miserable, but they're some of the most loyal people on the planet because they keep coming back after those teams year after year after year. The Browns and the Indians have found more ways to break hearts than any other team I can think of. I mean, get close and break a heart. The Cavs, the same thing. So,
but honestly, with the Cavs back in the day, did you really think that they were going to win? I mean, I know Michael Jordan broke their hearts, but you would look at that team and be like, Brad Daugherty?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ron Harper was my guy, but Brad Daugherty?
Yes, sir. So if it wasn't for
but come on.
If it wasn't for Jordan coming to the league and changing the landscape of the East, it was really Detroit for a few years, but Cleveland was right behind them. I'm telling you. Mm-hmm. Larry Nance, Daugherty, Mark Price, Craig Elo was there for a while. Steve Kerr, those boys could ball. Those boys could ball. I thought they were going to do something.
Hot Rod Williams was on that.
Hot Rod Williams was on that. Yep, absolutely. That they had a deep team, and they could have made some noise, but Michael J. Jordan,
one man.
Can't stand him.
Well, anyway, my personal sports history was my 7th grade year in middle school at Cranston Johnson Catholic Regional School. We won a Catholic League championship. And in high school, I played soccer. Yes, I played soccer. I grew up in the islands, so that was like common, just nature. Like I never learned any drills. We just watched TV. And like Uncle B said earlier, Wild World of Sports in Trinidad at the time, we didn't have cable TV. Though. I think that was something that happened in the early 2000s. But growing up, it was just we would get the Wild World of Sports feed, and that's how I was introduced to basketball, seeing the Celtics and the 76ers and the Lakers, and that's how I ultimately got introduced to sports, just seeing that. And in high school, I played soccer for like 2 years. I got like 2nd or 3rd team all division or whatever, and I had some good times, but my extent was just cheering for other people. But with saying that, let's welcome to the show my man Ed. Ed, you there? Everybody say what's up.
How's it going?
What up, Ed?
Hillside.
AKA Curse the Hillside Strangler. AKA Turtle. Yo, quick aside, when I first started high school, I remember I went to the gym because people, I guess, were just playing ball. And I remember like, oh man, I just left 8th grade and we played basketball there. People told me I was nice. And then I walked into the gym and I saw Ed throw the ball in the air, run, catch it, and then try to dunk. And then I said, yo, who's that? And they said, oh, he a freshman. I was like, I looked at myself. I was like, I'm not trying out for the basketball team. So everybody introduce my man, Ed. Say what's up to the world, Ed.
What's up, people? What's up?
So we're talking right now the personal sports history, like of yourself. Like maybe you want to join in or you want us to push on. Tell us a little bit about your personal sports history.
Personal sports history. I've been playing pickup sports pretty much my whole life. Football has been my primary sport, primary love, but been playing basketball pickup games forever. I mean, as long as I can remember. I mean, from elementary, probably from like middle school all the way up through like college, whether it was on Rhode Island College, somewhere in the neighborhood, Gainwell Street, Buckland Park, watching the epic playground battles, all those different things that would happen throughout the years. But I would love playing ball. I mean, I remember before, for those of you that from the Providence area, we had High Tone Records. Our boy Glenn, they used to be there, and a lot of times, sometimes when on like say during the summertime, when he would close down the store, we would go play ball at Gainwell Street till about 2-3 o'clock in the morning type situation.
I know because
Davis Park was another one.
Midnight League and all that.
Yeah, Midnight League. Davis Park was another park in the city. You know, it had the Midnight League, but even still, their lights used to stay on. I mean, I used to be out there until the lights went out. Another good friend of mine, Adam McCauley from back in the day, they used to call him Bird because of his jump shot. he was just on point with it. I remember he and I used to have battles. One time we played in the rain, pickup game in the rain, just me and him. And that's how much I started loving basketball, even though football was my primary thing. Played junior, preteen, Pop Warner, all the, Cowboys, North Providence Jets. Even though people looked at me crazy, like, wait a minute, you're going to the Jets? Like, like there ain't too many of us over there. So and I'm like, yeah, but I stood to gain more playing time. So when I went over there, I got a lot more playing time, a lot more experience, great organization. And the kids was built like, I don't know what they were taking. I don't know if there was Flintstones, or steroid versions of Flintstones. These kids was big for some teenagers. I mean, huge. I'm like, wait a minute, they were built like high schoolers. But we ended up winning the championship my first year, and the second year we went to the finals, I believe. But just great experience all in all. Loved it.
I appreciate it. So let's move on to our next question. Your favorite sports team or player, and we'll start with let's start with Uncle B. Tell us your favorite sports teams or players.
So are we talking the major sports, basketball, football?
Yeah, basketball and football. Let's rush.
Okay, so football, the greatest team ever assembled, the 6-time Super Bowl champs, Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Oh boy.
So
so the number 6 is the delineation of the greatest, right?
well, I mean,
number 6.
Nobody did it better.
The number 6 you just said is the line of.
I know where you're going with that. I know where you're going. So, yeah, the Steelers are my favorite team. I think my favorite. And you know what? I'm a Pistons fan. Pistons are my favorite team, basketball, but my favorite player is Michael Jordan.
Okay.
My favorite player is Michael Jordan. My favorite player in the NFL of all times, I can go between me and Joe Green, Lynn Swan. It's hard,
Yeah.
So those are my favorite teams and my favorite player.
Okay, what say you, Ed?
Well, team. I mean, I'm from the Northeast, so it's pretty much anything Patriots, Celtics, players for a while. Like Rasheed Wallace is one of my favorite players, just because of the way his game was set up. And like, I mean, we're talking like NBA Live. I'm like, oh, okay, just give me Portland because Rasheed Wallace. That's what I want to do. I like a lot of those underdog type players and guys who are really pretty and get in there and mix it up. Guys who are off the beaten path, but we're still able to get it done.
Okay. What about you, Jamie?
So my favorite team right now currently has to be the Celtics. I'm really a baseball guy. Like the Red Sox are really my main love. But when they traded away Mookie Betts, I don't know, man. It's like
that one. I understand it. That was a money thing, or because sometimes I just don't get baseball. But go ahead, you finish off, and we'll jump into that afterwards.
Well, yeah, they say it was a money thing, but I don't know, man. That took a toll on me though, and so now I'm all about the Celtics, man. And if I had to pick a player, I love Paul Pierce, man. Like I've been with him through the, when he was with Antoine Walker and it was like that duo tandem, and then he went through those
when he got the pokey in the club.
Yeah, man, I was with him, man. I mean, it was like scary because it was like, is he gonna play again? And he came back, and I could just remember being so happy for him because remember he was like almost gonna get traded, like he wanted out.
He wanted out. I mean, his tune has changed now in his latter years, but I was there, and you wanted out.
Yeah, and people weren't too happy with him either.
Yeah,
because he was like kind of like what you're hearing now with Tatum, how he's like he just wants to score, he just wants his numbers and that sort of thing. But then KG came along with Ray Allen, and that changed everything. And but seeing him, I still could like see him like pumping his NBA Finals MVP trophy.
Yeah,
and so that was like a super duper like just incredible moment. From hearing KG says anything is possible to Pierce being the NBA Finals MVP. I mean, it couldn't have. It went from the lowest of the low to the highest of the high. So
in like a couple of years,
yeah, that really captured me, man. And so it's been ride or die with them all throughout. And so but I love all, kind of fell out of love with the NFL a little bit with the Colin Kaepernick stuff. But I'm back with it now. And, I love my Patriots. Gotta give a shout out to Tom Brady. There's absolutely no way I could hate on him. He's a love-hate relationship, it seems like, with Brady.
It's like that was your ex-girlfriend and y'all broke up on good terms because she wanted to go to school over here and you was going to school.
But I'm happy for her. I'm happy for her. You're
like, ooh, you a valedictorian. Like, you know what I'm saying? I was the same way because I'm like, I'm not a Tampa Bay fan, even though I cheered for them back in the day when it was Super Bowl. I liked the Tampa Bay. I liked Tony Dungy and all that stuff. I was mad when they let him go to get Gruden, but I was happy for Brady this year. Like, in a way, I wanted him to win to dead the whole, well, it was because of Bill Belichick. Well, it's proven that it's a great quarterback and a great coach with a great supporting cast,
Yeah,
man, I can't get with it. I'm sorry, I can't get with it.
You can't.
I'm old school. There's grown men walking around these streets wearing Tampa Bay Buccaneer Brady jerseys saying we did it. I'm like, who is we? The last time I checked, you might not even know where Tampa Bay is in Florida, let alone.
A lot of people don't. I went there and I didn't even know. I was like, I don't know how we got here, but we there. But to each his own. I can't knock him. I see that's their favorite play. You had 20 years of this dude, so you're invested. So even if he goes somewhere else, you're like, man, but I like him. So I understand. But the jersey thing going a little too far for me. Like, I wear New England sports jerseys. It's hard for me to wear any other team jerseys unless it was like Magic Johnson or somebody because it had real significance to me. But to be cheering other people. But to you, Mike, what's your favorite? Who are your favorite sports teams and players? Basketball and baseball, football.
So I'm huge Cleveland sports fans, and I just like I mentioned at the top, I love my Cleveland sports, and even though I've been in New England
way longer.
Oh yeah, I probably you're absolutely right. I've been in New England longer than I grew up in Ohio, so I've been here longer. But I can't change that. Now I'll give you two of my favorites athletes, and neither one of them is out of Cleveland. Barry Sanders and Allen Iverson.
Oh,
now you look at the two of them. Were they the most physically gifted athletes? Were they the biggest athletes? Not really. They maximized their potential with what they had, and most importantly, and I don't know if any of you guys ever played pickup basketball with Linton before, but when I look at Allen Iverson, how he used to break ankles, that's how he made me feel. When I would play against Linton, I would break his ankles. I'd be like, yo,
oh my God.
I feel just like Allen Iverson right now. So that's my man right there. My man, 50 grand, Allen Iverson.
The closest you got to Allen Iverson was the fact that you had long arms. That was about it.
Listen, but the thing was, and I give you, Lent, I give you respect because you was the first dude I seen to try to do a finger roll from the foul line. So I give you much respect. Much respect.
I could do that. I got skills like that, bro. Don't hate on me. But anyway, me personally, my favorite sports team, of course, in everything New England, because like I said earlier, growing up in Trinidad, that was the first things that I saw in my world of sports was Celtics games. And then my dad lived in the U.S. before I did, so I knew he lived in that area. So it was almost like, well, my dad lives in that area, I'm gonna cheer for that team. But I fell in love with him. And growing up, I moved up here when the Red Sox were in the World Series against the Mets. That was my first introduction to New England sports. I started school and I was like, what the hell is this baseball thing? But everybody's cheering for the Red Sox. And I remember watching that game and Buckner had to go through his leg. I was like, I felt so bad for him, but then everybody else was in tears. And I was like, oh, this is serious up here. My favorite team are the Celtics. I was always a New England fan because I was like, just like the other panelists, I grew up there. It's almost a representation of you. Like, this is who I am. So whenever I go elsewhere, like people knew me when we came to college down here in Atlanta, everything New England. They just knew us as them are the boys from Rhode Island, the two black people from Rhode Island. You know what I'm saying? That's what we refer to me and my brother. But favorite players though, like Jordan and all those people were great, but I identify with players who kind of embodied when I played basketball my size, because Michael Jordan was 6'6", dunking. I wasn't doing all of that. I could try to play with the aggression, but for me, Dennis Johnson was my one of my favorite. Him and Isaiah Thomas were two of my favorite players because they were small. DJ would stealing the ball. He looked so unassuming. When I was younger, you can't tell it now because I've glowed up and I'm a beautiful man now. Back then, I had glasses. I wore goggles to play ball. So people would always look at me and be like, and part of the show, my brother D and Mike knows and Uncle B knows, my brother, by the time he was in 4th, 5th grade, he was taller than me.
Yeah.
So like I'm here like in high school, we go to play a pickup game and they're picking him and he's like 10, 11 years old. He was 6 feet tall. I was 5'5". And he would tell them pick my brother, but they were like, he wearing goggles. And in my head, I'm like, bro, if I'm wearing goggles, you got to know I'm serious about this ball. Like nobody even buys prescription goggles. You know what I'm saying? Kareem did, Horace Green did it. Like they were serious ballers. But I used to get hated on like that. But Isaiah and Dennis Johnson were like my two favorite players. And with football, I was a Walter Payton guy. Like I came to the U.S. and kind of the Walter Payton story, and it was a feel good and just the respect that a lot of people had for him. Like Walter Payton, just like I wasn't a Bears fan, but even though they beat the Patriots, but I'm like, yo, everybody, this guy is real good. Like it's not like we lost to a bunch of scrubs, like you know what I'm saying. But Walter Payton was like one of my favorite football players. But that's great to hear. That's great to hear. So now that we've gotten the sports players and people out the way, let's kind of move into some more like topical, some more argument. We're gonna have some more arguments in this. The better era of basketball, and we're going between. For most of us, we're in the age range where we'll know the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Some of us on the panel, Uncle B, might know the 70s. So let's start with Ed. Like Ed, your favorite era of basketball?
It's got to be the toss-up, depending, because that era with Magic, Bird, Jordan. You know, I remember watching Jordan win his last championship. That era was a very gritty era, so I like that era. But when we come up a little farther, I would definitely have to say that probably probably the end of that Bird, Magic era, Jordan era, going into that era with Kobe, Vince, AI. You know, when them guys were at the peak of their game, because you know you got to see them on the come up. Not so much that LeBron era. So basically, probably like from the end of Jordan, probably till about I would say Vince Carter's peak. A little bit after that, Tracy McGrady, Shaq, all them guys in their peak years.
Okay, so when they started,
that's definitely my era.
Yeah, okay. So that was like late 90s, early 2000s kind of.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
what say you?
Probably mid 2000s.
Yeah, what say you, Uncle B?
I would say the best era of basketball. You know, I'm going to throw in like around 77 to like late 90s. You know, because I had a chance to see Dr. J. And I had a chance to see Bird and Magic transform the game. Because back in the 70s, I mean, you had a lot of fights in the game. You had bruises, you had enforcers in the game, right? So that started transitioning out. 80s were great. I mean, if you go back and you look at some of the All-Star games, you know, you all mentioned Isaiah Thomas, Magic. I mean, Jordan, Bird. That was some of the best. I mean, it was a show, right? And I think up to the Jordan era, a couple years later, you know, as we got into Kobe, as you guys were saying, into Vince, you know, that was a good era. But when the rules started changing in the game, to me, it made the game. The game is still fun, but it made the game, you know, I would say less. I would say competitive, right? It's still competitive, but it was not the same. Yeah, because I mean, you know, just some of the rules. So I say up until 2 or 3 years after Jordan retired, I think it was the best era of basketball. You know, the 90s were great. The 80s were great. You know, even the late 70s going into the 80s were great.
Yeah, and I tend to agree in the sense that it was great because there was the competition, and it kind of leads into the current era where a lot of these guys didn't know each other, so the competition was more like you're trying to get your respect because you didn't know this
Yeah,
guy, and for some reason you hated him.
Exactly.
So I see that era. What say you, Jamie? Your favorite era?
So I definitely appreciate the time where Jordan was pretty much ruling the NBA.
So that's like mid 90s.
No,
Yeah,
21.
exactly. Yeah, like basically all of the 90s, really. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, even though when he left and came back, you know, as a Wizard, it was weird or whatever. But
Yeah.
you know that, like, I would say that was the more entertaining because, like Dr. B said, it was more physical. It was more, you know, it was like you couldn't even think of cheering for, you know, the Pistons or, you know, because it was like you hated them, you know. There was those rivalries and the teams were together. There wasn't no, you know, I'm just going to leave because management isn't doing what I find appropriate or reasonable to me. But I will say this though, I actually enjoy basketball more as far as like as the actual flow of the game. Like, I like the rules now where you're not hand checking as much. You're not, you know, I actually appreciate it because I like to see the ball handling. I like to see the 3-point shot. Now, I don't like the, you know, like the style that the Houston Rockets were playing with Harden, where, you know, it was basically, I'm gonna shoot a 3 and everybody get out the way. Or, you know, if I pass it to you, shoot the 3.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get with that. Like, so the NBA nowadays,
lazy pickup ball.
It's gone a little too far with the 3-pointer.
Yeah.
But I would say today, these guys today are so gifted and incredible with the basketball. Like, come on, man. Like, when Damian Lillard pulls up from 37 feet and it's like nothing to him, it's like, to me, that's amazing. Like Curry, you know, it's like, so I appreciate the game, how it's played now.
Yeah.
But I would say the best era was the time of Jordan because it was just more passionate and I found it more entertaining for that. But as far as like a basketball purist, I think today's game is phenomenal.
Okay. And I kind of agree with you. A lot of your points there. How about you, Mike?
I agree with all you guys. I think somewhere between mid to late 80s throughout the mid 90s, probably the best era of basketball. And I could derail this conversation and say it runs in tandem with hip hop. You know what I mean? That's my favorite era as well. It was a good era of basketball. There's a lot of
basketball.
Exactly. The challenge that I have now is that it's a different brand of basketball. It's a different skill set. And Jamie, you're absolutely right. These are some of the most skilled athletes that we've ever seen the game have. But it's different too because I don't see as much of that killer competition, winner take all type of mentality. These guys will hug it out at the end of the games, and you know they'll share agents and marketing reps and everything. So it's a different time to me than it was back in my favorite time, which was the 80s and the 90s for basketball. But it's funny because I can go all down different type of rabbit holes with this conversation because
you want to go to a hole, we can go.
Yeah, because you look at the transition between the eras. There was always somebody in line to be the next greatest. And I feel like that's kind of ended with LeBron. I can't tell you who the next greatest basketball player is.
I have the same feeling.
And that worries me about where the direction of the sport is going, because we may hit one of those lulls like we did in the early 2000s where it was bad basketball.
Just a bunch of
yeah. So right now I can't tell you who the next greatest is. Like Dr. J, you watch him play, well, that's going to be the next greatest. Or Magic and Bird, those are the next greatest. Or Jordan coming along, then Kobe, and then LeBron. You could still say today, LeBron may be the best player in the game. and he's been that way for a long time. So
It's 18. He's been 18 years.
Yeah.
18 years. And my reaction to that, the reason why I asked that question, because a lot of it plays into the sensibilities of us as adults now. Like growing up, basketball in the 80s and the 90s, physical, it was tough. You knew the teams didn't like each other, but at the same time, they were specialists. Like you had the shooting guard who was the scorer, the point guard got everybody the ball, and maybe the center of the power forward would be the main offensive weapons. But there were a lot of dudes who were just there to be bullies. And then it was just a lot of post-up basketball, but it wasn't like post-up with any kind of finesse and moves. Like Akeem would do it, Patrick Ewing had his thing, but a lot of dudes would just be that Charles Barkley 1-4 flat and just pound it in the post, pound it. And the games used to get so boring at the end because you knew that's all it was going to be the last 5 minutes was post up, draw a foul, go to the foul line. And the NBA realized that too. Like, this is boring to watch. So I agreed. As far as intensity and whatnot, the 90s was that 90s, early 2000s. But right now, like Jamie said, and Mike as well, watching the guys play, like Damian Lillard and Steph Curry shooting from 30-something feet, when we knew back in the day we had shooting competitions from half court just to see if we could make it. And it was a struggle. And these guys are just pulling up and you're like, that's going in. And it's not like a lucky going in. It's like it goes in consistently.
Yeah, that's what they do.
And when you watch Damian Lillard shoot, it's like his form, he doesn't look like he's putting any extra effort into it. He's just pulling up, letting go, and you're like, oh my God, my shoulder hurts looking at that. But he's just shooting in. So
but the one thing that's a little bit different, and Dr. Uncle Mr. B said it best when he said he loves his Pistons. Those dudes played defense.
Yeah.
And you were scared to play against them. You were scared to bring it into the hole. Nobody's picking up full court. You may get Dennis Schroeder who's picking up and they're like, oh, that man can play defense. Well, nobody else is picking up full court playing defense. Like if you knew that Dame Lillard was going to shoot from half court, or you had somebody, if this was a different era, they was picking him up at half court. Maybe full court, because they would not let him get that shot off.
Not at all.
That's one of my problems with today's basketball, because there's not a lot of defense being played.
Can I ask Mike a question? Because when you said, I was thinking, I'm like, because I never thought about who's the next, like who does LeBron pass it on to? But I can't help but wonder, like, why is that? And the only thing I could think is that because of, like, nowadays it's like it's all about branding, right? Like players are now a brand, like back in the day it was like the NBA was like trying to find out who is that guy that's going to carry the mantle. Nowadays the NBA can't really do that because everybody has their own mantle almost. Does that make sense?
I understand. They can't capitalize on the individual because the individual is already capitalizing on themselves.
Exactly. So that's a really interesting point you make, Mike, because I never thought about that. Like, I've just been in the moment, I guess. And actually, I'm probably just thinking LeBron's the man. Like, there is no, I can't even get past, because LeBron's still the man. So I don't know. Maybe when he slows down.
Yeah.
The problem is that right now we're quick to rush to say who's the next. Because if you were 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, Luka Doncic, he's the next.
Yeah.
I think we're looking for somebody to crown be the next, and we haven't found him yet.
And part of that, what made people back in the day the next, when you saw them, you knew it, and they accepted everything that went with being the best.
Yeah.
Like LeBron, regardless of how you feel about him and Jordan being 1 and 2, we'll get into that later, Uncle B. But what's the name? He understands I am the best, so I have to carry. Just same way Jordan did and Bird did and Magic. They know in order for this to be, I'm the best, I have to approach every game. I have to be the best. I can't just score points. I have to embrace everything and be the leader. And a lot of these dudes, they're not that. And that goes back to what you're saying, Uncle B. Like, these guys in the 90s and the 2000s, they fought against each other. But because, and Mike will know as an AAU coach, now you have dudes playing AAU, whereas when they were in those times, they played high school where they played ball, where they lived at, and then they went to college. Now with AAU, nobody plays high school sometimes even where they live. And some people don't even play high school ball because AAU ball is everything. So and you end up now, it's a good thing and a bad thing because now the world is smaller because now kids can be friends. You can have a kid who grew up in Florida be good friends with somebody who lives in Washington State because they played AAU ball together. So now these kids have grown up knowing each other. So we teach them about sportsmanship and they develop these relationships. And because they're the best players, they get to know each other. Now, when they get to the league, how do you hate somebody that you've played ball with and you've seen at tournaments and y'all became friends? So how do you hate someone you know? But I think a lot of them, they go at each other because it's more, those are the ones you know. When I'm on the court, I want to be the best. So even if you're my friend, Mike can tell you that many a times we're best friends, but I had to embarrass him on the basketball court because
here we go.
I couldn't have him coming back to my house or on my podcast and telling people that he did illicit things to me on the basketball court. That's not going to happen. So I understand the guys today, the problem they have. It's not like they don't hate each other. They're competitive, but because they have those relationships, they know the hate of it known.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think you're right.
What you think, Turn? Oh, I called him man Turtle, man. He's taking it back.
I think it's the rise of, to Jamie's point, even Mike's, right? It's the rise of social media, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, you needed the NBA because that was your distribution, right? It's almost like, to Mike's point before, as far as music and everything to the effect. Back in the day, artists always you would go to the machine.
The record label.
Whatever the big label was, Def Jam, Loud, whoever it was. But as time went on with Napster and all these different things come along, and technology, like, listen, we don't need you. I really don't need you. I'm bringing enough to the table by myself that I don't need you. So it's the same thing with the NBA, where these athletes don't have to lean on the league as much anymore for their exposure, because now you got somebody who, you might have your boy who you gave your phone to. He's live tweeting about the game, right? He's commenting back and forth. You're engaging right on social media right after their game. Versus, okay, now we got to go to the post-game press conference. We got to sit down. We got to talk. Like, no, I can speak for myself directly. There's nobody gonna mince my words or anything to that effect. So I'm bigger than the league. I'm bigger than the league in and of itself. So I think that makes it very crucial at this point in time, where you're already coming to the table with already an established identity versus people saying you're the next one. You're the next one. No, you know why I'm the next one? Because I got these million people behind me who say I'm the next one. Whether it's hands on the net, I know I got a million followers. I can sell merch too. I can do all these different things. So if this NBA thing doesn't work out, I'm still going to be good. I'll sell them whatever. So I think that part of it is definitely crucial, because if you think about it, Jordan, Rodman, Lambert, all these guys had social media back in the day. There'd be 9 million one different memes about Lambert getting punched in the face and this one getting choked out and doing this and
Jordan, they might not. They would have been in a lot of trouble. They would have had a lot of scandal. You know, Rodman, like. Right now, their adventures are things of lore that we're like, oh, Jordan was in Vegas playing craps at the table, smoking a cigar. But if one of the players today just was out late at a club, we're up in arms. When Jordan was out 4 a.m. and came and played a basketball game, but because there wasn't a phone there to show you, it just became like, oh, he dropped 45 after he did it. So it was almost like he was so great, he could just do whatever. But it was just the fact that we didn't have access to these players. So therefore, and they didn't have access to each other. Like a lot of them, like Charles Barkley once said, like he didn't know players until he got to the NBA, because he was like, I knew who I knew in college, and I knew Isaiah and when I played on the U.S. basketball team. But before that, I had no relationship with them. I would just hear about them, and that was it. So that breeds for that intensity. But nowadays, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Like Ed said, we kind of romanticize the past with the basketball, but when you think about it, a lot of those players, they weren't too sophisticated enough to understand the business of it. So you hear a lot of stories where these guys played all these years, and at the end, they're still like, I don't have that much money. Well, where nowadays players know, and Jordan kind of ushered this in, and not Magic, let's say Jordan, because he kind of knew his worth, and a lot of players looked at that like, wait a minute, you guys are paying Jordan $25 million his last 6 years in the league, and he was getting like $4 or $5 million. He could do that because he was making $100 million off the court with Nike. But now a lot of these younger players are like, okay, I'm coming in here knowing my worth, knowing that I control my brand, and I have a mind of my own, and that leads to what Mike said about competition, where people weren't leaving, but you had a lot of players back in the day who were stuck on really terrible teams that you wished, like, man, Patrick Ewing, I wish you had gotten a good shooting guard. You might have won a championship. The same thing, KG almost had that. We revel in KG now with the Celtics, but he was about to be a footnote in Minnesota, you know. And you look at Charles Barkley, all these years in Philadelphia, he would even tell you they were terrible, and he wished that the GM was. Nowadays, we've taught our kids to grow up and have a say in things, so we can't be mad when the players say, "Well, this ain't working out," and it is an AAU mentality, like, "Oh, this team's garbage. I'm gonna go play with another AAU thing." But you got to take the good with the bad. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm all about player empowerment.
Mhm.
Like, there was a lot of, stuff being said about Jason Tatum because he was taking pictures with ruffle tips, and people had, you would have thought that he cursed, somebody's grandmother or something. And it's like, people, man, like, I really don't have a problem with it. Like, if you're a young man, 22, he has a young child of his own. Look, man, if you're trying to get more money and widen your brand,
Yep.
go for it, man. Like more power to you.
Yeah, because you got to look at a lot of them. They're looking at the greats. You look at the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, and players like that, Magic Johnson. They've diversified themselves off the court, and let's say they took advantage of their success on the court while they were playing. Whereas a lot of these dudes back in the day, the on-court success was that's what it was, on-court success. They weren't sophisticated or savvy enough to know I could make sure that I take care of my family with this. I can have some pressure over the team to make sure I get a decent contract. It was almost that, because it was such a new thing, like, I'm happy to be in the NBA. This team is good to me, I'm gonna be loyal. And I'm all for loyalty, but there's a business behind it where the owners and them are like with KG, when I use them as an example because they had that good year with, they had Sam Cassell, Latrell Sprewell, Malik Beasley, and they made it to the Western Conference Finals, and we thought the next year, they're going to the finals, and they let everybody go because they didn't want to pay the money. They had KG, they gave him 100, but they gave everybody else minimum. So it was like, now he's stuck there, and they're collecting money at the door, they're getting the TV money and all that, but the team is terrible and KG's going nowhere. So I think once you saw LeBron kind of come in after Jordan, it was like, okay, you're not going to just use me up, and at the end, I'm gonna be a footnote for the greatest player to never win a championship. Well, I never won a championship because I never had a good team around me. So what do you guys think about that?
So I'm gonna jump in because that's relevant to Cleveland sports, right? Because you look at the Indians, they are nothing but a professional farm system for the rest of the major leagues. They'll bring up a bunch of players, and next thing you know, they're playing for the Yankees, they're playing for this team, they're playing for this team. And so I agree. I am all for player empowerment. These dudes have earned the right to go wherever they want. The challenge is that it goes back to what Dr. B said about him being a Steelers fan. New Orleans was garbage, and he went to where the teams that you could actually cheer for, and it makes it hard to root for your home team, especially in the NBA with so many small markets. Like, I go into the season looking at the Cavs roster and saying, there's no chance that I'm rooting for this team or having anything to root for. I shouldn't say root for this team. I will have nothing to root for past December 1st.
Yep.
And me being a grown man, I'm good with that. But a little kid, if they really want to root for their home team,
you got to have some success.
You got to have some success. And more importantly, if you do get a LeBron and you see him walk after 5 years, and you know it's another 10, 15 years before you get that next LeBron, it's really hard to be a fan of a small market team. And that's my problem with player movement. It isn't about them not having the right to do what they want to do. They earn that right. But it's the fact that me looking at the Cavs, I'm looking at that roster right now, I'm like, ooh, it's going to be some lean years for the next few years. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, and I totally understand, but then again, I'm looking at it from their position. If I was even at, like, let's put it from our position, Uncle B, you're a professor. We all have full-time jobs. If you're at a college and you're teaching your butt off and you're being the best, but the college doesn't want to invest in your department, and you feel like I'm not giving the students the best that I can, I need to go somewhere where there are resources and there are other people on the faculty that can help me help these students. So I get it from the standpoint like, hey, Cleveland had 6 years with LeBron, and you gave Antoine Jameson, Ben Wallace, who else? Eric Snow. Eric Snow couldn't do it with Allen Iverson. What make you think he's gonna do it with LeBron? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it was like LeBron was like, okay, I gave you 6 years and you could never bring anybody, or being in Cleveland was an impediment. I couldn't get people to want to come to live there to play basketball.
Right.
After that, but he put them in the spotlight, but they still couldn't attract anybody beyond like I keep going back to Antoine Jameson. He was the biggest star that they could attract besides LeBron. That was sad, you know, but it was really sad.
Yeah, and they got Shaq. You know, they got Shaq when he was way.
They got Shaq when he was Shaquille. Like, you know what I'm saying? They got Shaq when he was Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal.
Exactly.
He was ready to retire at that point. But I get what you're saying. But they got everybody too late. It was like the Celtics in the 80s. They were always picking up people who were good
supplemental players. Yeah.
Oh no, they were picking up the Celtics after Larry Bird and they were gone. They started picking up players who were beyond their prime. They had Dominique in there. They would bring people in. Like they started in and worked in the 80s with Bill Walton and those guys. But after that, they always got people at the end of their careers hoping to rekindle that magic. And it just never really worked out.
But the hard part is that the product, what they're producing, what they're manufacturing is entertainment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's to have it translate or correlate to being a professor. It's a little bit different because you're shaping lives. You're doing it's a different animal. But when it's at the bottom line, the end product is entertainment, and you're in one of these markets where you're not very entertaining. I mean, that's a challenge because now that's a bad business move. That's a bad business model.
Okay. So now that we moved on, we've talked about the mentality of the players. Let's get a little bit more controversial now.
Oh, here we go.
Who, in your mind, I have my opinion on this. Who is the so-called GOAT of basketball? We'll start with you, Ed. Who do you categorize as the GOAT?
Jordan. Just because of the way he transformed the game on and off the court. That's to me, his impact is felt that much greater. LeBron, well, I would say on the court, definitely Jordan. I would say off the court, I gotta amend that. Off the court, I would have to give it LeBron right now because of like his impact on social issues and how outspoken he's been. And he's just like, listen, I'm right there. I can't breathe t-shirts. What I gotta do, dedicate this money, put this up, do this, that, and the third.
Schools,
as far as the court is concerned, I definitely gotta give it to Jordan because I know it was a discussion that we had on Facebook not too long ago, and just kind of discussing like who's the greatest in-game dunker and so on and so forth. We talked about that a little bit. But then looking back at some of the stuff that Jordan did, through all some of those highlights, it was just like, listen, this guy completely changed the game, the mindset, that killer instinct that, listen, I'm going to rip your heart out, and I'm going to leave it here on this court, on your court, and I'm going to walk away with this championship. It doesn't matter. Just that mindset was just phenomenal. I think Jordan, to me, was definitely the GOAT. Never mind all 6-0 and he went 6-0 in the finals. No, it's just the way how his impact was felt throughout. Now, no taking away from what Kareem has done, what Dr. J has done, all these different, as far as scoring titles and points and so on and so forth. I'm looking at generational shifting impact of the game. That is Jordan for me.
Okay, what say you, Mike?
Jordan. And there's a multitude of reasons, and I've battled with Linton far too many times on this topic, so I already know which direction he's going to go in. So I'm gonna say Jordan for a couple of different reasons. But and Linton, I can't wait for you to explain who your GOAT is because I have a big question for you.
Okay.
So I'm just reserve it. I'm just say Jordan and sit back and just wait for Linton to talk. Okay.
How about you, Jamie?
Look, you called the wrong person because I think it's Jordan too, man. The thing that, and I'm always about the underdog. I'm all about the underdog. So I rooted against Michael Jordan. I did not want him to win. You know, when he was going up against the Jazz, I was rooting for the Jazz. When he was going up against the Suns, I wanted to see Barkley. You know, it's like anytime, but that like his just like he's gonna get the ball. You know what I mean? Like, and when he gets the ball, he's not giving it up. So it's like, to me, I always respected that about him, that he was more than willing. He won so many games that it probably was easy for him to take the L when he missed. Yep. But it's like, I that's one thing. Like when it came to the comparison of Jordan and LeBron, LeBron's gonna make the basketball play. You know what I mean? But there's so many times where I felt like LeBron did it because it was an easy way out. You know what I mean? I made the right read. You make the right read. You made the right basketball play. They missed the shot. Hey, you win some, you lose some. Mm-hmm. Jordan was a whole different mentality. It was like, no, whether we win or lose, I'm going to determine that, know? Mm-hmm. And so I've always respected that about him. Like Ed said, it ain't even about the 6-0 thing. I think that gets blown out of proportions, really, because
Bill Russell had 11.
Yeah. Like to me, that doesn't really matter. But to be able to to guard your best player, try to eliminate them out the game. And like he said, he was a human highlight reel himself too. Like people forget about that. They think about the fadeaway and the pose when he hit on Byron Russell.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's like, don't forget that he was dunking on people too. So so yeah, I give it to Jordan, man.
Okay, Uncle B.
Okay, so after 1993, GOAT was solidified. After 1993, GOAT was solidified. I mean, Michael Jordan, hands down. I mean, I'm imagine this guy don't retire twice in his prime. Can you? He would easily score over 40,000 points. I'm not saying he would win 8 straight titles. He would have broken the record and went to.
I get it. I see what you're saying.
At least 10 or 12 straight Eastern Conference Finals.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The NBA is so different. We were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
The criteria for picking MVPs in those eras were different compared to now. Do you think Michael Jordan should have retired with just 5 league MVPs?
Okay.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
No. He should have more. This man he transformed a generation. Everybody wanted to be like Mike, LeBron, Kobe, everybody. This man was I remember going to a game against the Hawks in Atlanta. We couldn't get into the stadium until like halftime because it was so packed, right? That was the impact Jordan had. And look at the actual impact he had off the court. Now, and of course, on different social issues, he didn't speak up a lot, right? But guess what? He still made an impact off the court also. I mean, it's so many things that cannot be quantified, right? With this guy. So again, remember this: Jordan would have the numbers would be increased. Mm-hmm. I think, and if he wouldn't have retired those 2 times in his prime, but again, he's done so much where you cannot quantify that. So again, to me, after 1993, it was solidified.
Okay. So now I'm gonna get to my opinion on this whole GOAT thing. I agree with you, Uncle B, on the fact that when people say Jordan would have ran 8 titles, I'm like, he retired because he said it. I was burnt out for the first 3. I couldn't physically, mentally get myself to keep going. Go ahead, Uncle B.
Because of that summer impacted it even more.
Right. You know what I mean? So, but I agree with you.
Play basketball today if he could. He would play basketball today if he could.
And I agree with you that if he had kept playing, I don't think they would have won 8 straight, but I think they would have been in the mix and he would have scored. He would still be Michael Jordan scoring, but I think the mental stress of that championship run, it would have was too much for him. He just needed a break, plus the summer things happening with his dad and whatnot. My opinion on the whole GOAT thing is I can't subscribe to just having one person being the be all end all of basketball. To say that this person is the greatest and there will be none better would be render basketball useless. In my mind, and I've heard Michael Jordan say this, and I've heard other players say this, we have the best players of the greats of their eras. And to me, Michael was the greatest of his era because
All times.
his era.
All times.
Because look at it this way, when Bill Russell was playing, and I know the argument's going to be there weren't that many teams, blah, blah, blah. But you had to play who you had to play. And if you think there weren't that many teams, all the teams had the best players. So he ran off 11 straight or 10 straight and one as a coach, player coach. So, but at that time, I'm sure there were reporters reporting Bill Russell is the greatest of all time. Because
now, L, but this is your question. You can't conveniently say that there's no GOAT. You have to answer.
I said there is a GOAT for each generation.
So who is your GOAT, Lennon? Who's the greatest basketball player of all times, in your opinion?
I don't think there is one because I can't say LeBron is better than Jordan.
Oh no, you cannot. You definitely can't say that.
You know what?
Let me tell you why, and I'm going to chime in too on this. We were talking about eras. We were talking about mentality.
Yeah.
Imagine Michael Jordan say if you can do it during that time. Oh, I'm going to go play with Magic in Brooklyn.
Hey.
Right? No. You want to beat the best. You don't always want to play with the best. You want to beat the best.
He wanted to be in New York.
Yeah, you cannot look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm the greatest player ever when you're trying to play with all the great players.
He was about to be a Knick, and then they drafted Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant.
So Linton, pound for pound, in their eras, who was the better player, LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Who's the better of the two?
For me, for my
if you match them up right now, if they played each other,
my preference would be LeBron because he's 6'9", 260 pounds. He can handle the ball like Jordan. He got just as much vertical. He's bigger, stronger, faster, and all the things Jordan he can do except maybe shoot foul shots.
Oh my!
And he's guarding 1 through 4 or 5.
Because there's no true centers in the NBA now.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So I mean, but back then there was.
Let's stop this here. Stop comparing Abraham to God the Father. Stop. Okay. LeBron James will be compared to Michael Jordan. It is two different mentalities. People say, okay, let's snap your finger. Let's snap your finger and put Jordan in this era right now. 50 points easy. Blink your finger, put LeBron in that era. He would be an average player because from the mental standpoint, the physical type game, you think he got out when somebody passed by him for a foul? Come on,
Carmelo.
What would Jordan do? What would LeBron do under Jordan rules against the Pistons? Would he average 30 points a game? No.
He was bigger than most Pistons. Bill Laimbeer.
It is a mental thing. Listen, basketball is mental, man.
It's 100% mental. But so Linton, I feel like your definition of GOAT is who's the most physically gifted person to play.
No, not at all.
Well, so let me ask you a question then. So if that's not the case, let me ask you a question. Who's the greatest quarterback to ever play?
Joe Montana.
Listen,
he'll jump through the screen. No, that's a question that's coming up afterwards.
No. Because it's the same thing. It's the same thing because if you say Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback ever, he's not the most physically gifted person to ever play.
He's the most decorated and successful quarterback ever. But the best quarterback, if you're looking at it from a physical standpoint, it wouldn't have been Tom Brady.
Right. Exactly. And that's my point about LeBron James. He may be more physically gifted than Jordan was, but Jordan maximized his abilities. He exceeded his abilities. Kobe exceeded his abilities. LeBron, you're comparing them and saying that he is exceeding his ability. He's the most physically gifted person on the court. He's the most bigger, stronger, faster against defenses that don't play defense.
He's one of the most skilled players on the court. Let's look at it this way.
And let me say this. Let me jump in. I have never seen a player in any major sport. I have never seen it that people give so many excuses for. Finish. Yes.
If he had a mic, he would have dropped it right there.
First of all, the first 9 years of Mike's career, because I grew up in New England, and I remember hearing the news stories that people called him a gunner, and he was only about scoring. The first 9 years of his career, we tend to forget. All we remember is the 6 where he won. The first 9 years, he was first 7-9 years. People were comparing him to Magic and Larry, saying he will never be them because he's all about scoring and that's it. But here's my thing about LeBron. I'm not saying he's greatest. I just prefer LeBron over Jordan. But it's not like I'm saying Jordan is garbage. I'm just saying, like, if I was to go on the court right now and play ball, I know LeBron would pass me the ball. Whereas Jordan, if he hit his first shot, he was shooting every time.
That's what I know. If I play with MJ, I'm going to get the win.
Exactly. I don't need LeBron to pass me the ball. Probably miss it. If I'm looking for a win, I don't need to shoot.
Everybody be like, "Oh, that's just MJ and 4 dudes he picked up." You know what I'm saying? Like with LeBron, at least he'd be like, "I'm getting buckets." People be like, "Oh, LeBron got that squad playing good." But I digress. I'm just saying, LeBron, for as much as people downplay him, he is what?
He's a great player.
He's fourth in scoring because you're saying he's physically gifted, but the stats that he has means you have skills. Because there are a lot of physically gifted players who played in the league, i.e. Harold Miner and all these guys who could jump out the gym. But LeBron is fourth in the all-time in scoring. He's top 5 in assists, top 10 in steals, I think. So he has all these skills, plus he's physically gifted.
Yeah,
so that's why I say you can't just say he's the greatest of all time, because to me, greatest of all time means there's nobody ever going to be any better. So what's the point of playing? I just think if LeBron played in the 90s, he would grow up like Jordan and them. So he would have the same mentality.
But see, that's my point. I say snap your fingers and put them in there at that point in time, right then and there.
Do that. You can't do that.
I'm just saying you could because you speculating also back in the 90s.
No, my speculation is based on in reality, where if he's in that era, he grew up in that time, so he would have that same mentality.
Personally, I think some of these players would be very good to average players because you get a Gary Payton, up on the Steph Curry. You get a Gary Payton up on the things change, man. Things change.
And that all leads back to the GOAT thing. It all leads back to, you got to understand the rule changes. The two, because when Jordan was in that Pistons Jordan era rules and they were just beating him up, and people were like, "Yo, you're not better than him. You're just beating him up, and you're throwing goons out there, the Rick Mahorns, the Bill Lambiers. You're just beating up on him. You're not as skilled." So when the league said to all the Derek Harpers who would just hold your hip and were considered all first team defense, the minute they took away hand checking, Derek Harper and all those dudes were out the league. And then the Gary Paytons and people who could actually move their feet and had the skill to play. So that's why I say, like, Jordan was the greatest shooting guard. I'll give him the greatest shooting guard of all time.
I mean, the panel made the consensus, man.
What? I said he was the greatest shooting guard ever.
Man.
He was the greatest shooting guard ever.
We know that. But let me ask y'all a question. I'm gonna ask the panel a question. If you have to pick, who do you think? And I know who Linton's gonna pick. Who do you think is the greatest small forward of all times in the NBA? And who would you take? Let's say, for instance, when you needed on the last shot, you needed a bucket, crunch time. Who would you take?
Against LeBron, because he has just as many crunch time jump shots, game-winning shots as Jordan. He has more than Kobe.
So let me ask you this question: would you take LeBron in crunch time over Bird?
I don't know. Because Larry Bird is a shooter. Like, you don't have to be a shooter to make a crunch time shot. You don't have to be a shooter to make a crunch time shot. You just have to get a good shot.
True.
Larry
So
Bird is a shooter.
Who would you take in that situation?
I mean, I would to take the shot. I'd have more confidence in Larry Bird because he was a 3-point shooter.
Okay.
But at the same time, I wouldn't feel bad if LeBron had the ball either. He's hit just as many. I watched. He had like how many game-winning shots in playoffs and all that stuff. He has just as many. We keep talking about Michael Jordan against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Brian Russell. He has about 7 or 10 of them. LeBron has a bunch.
But you can't. The hard part is you can't compare eras for a few reasons. One of them being there's too many teams in the league right now. There's dudes playing in the league that should not be in the league. Yep. And this is the competition that they're playing against. You got the Clippers that was giving up 135 points the other night. on defense. Nobody's playing defense.
Yep.
And nobody,
To me, there's more teams than there was in the past, so the competition is watered down.
but also,
So LeBron is excelling against lesser.
but Jordan
talent.
he went his run. He went on his run once they took away hand checking, and they started giving you technical fouls, because a lot of times all those games you saw where Jordan got knocked down, Bill Laimbeer got punched, and all this stuff, nobody got a technical foul or even got thrown out the game. Now the rules are, if I hit a guy and he falls to the ground, I can get thrown out the game.
Right.
And hand check.
Wow.
Right. Everything's going to replay. But I will go back to Jamie's point, though, early on, that there's more skilled basketball players in the league now than there's ever been. These guys have skills that are out of this world, but it's easy. It's hard for me because you got kids that can dribble now, that could dribble circles around these guys, the point guards of old, that can shoot the lights out. We thought that a great shooter was Craig Hodges. And you look at that.
He was a great shooter, but he was a dime a dozen.
Right, and now and Steph Curry has redefined that. Dame Lillard has redefined that. So it's just a different brand of basketball. But at the same time, it's a lot easier to look this good against no defense
Exactly.
versus going into the hole and getting beat up by goons.
Yeah, it's an easy time to get padded stats, pretty much.
I don't think it's padded. You got to look at the rules. The league made it where you can't play defense. Anytime you get physical, these players flop back. It's a foul, and the refs call it, even though they can see. Come on, man, he didn't really impede you. You caused that. So and plus, you don't get any money for playing defense anymore. Like back in the day, Ben Wallace,
Yeah.
who was it? Mutombo,
Mm-hmm.
and Manute Bol made a living just blocking shots, and hitting 3-pointers at the top.
Playing
Right?
defense. Yep.
Mark Eaton, players like that. Even who's the big dude for Utah?
Mark Eaton. That was Eaton.
No, the other
Ostertag.
Tag. These guys had long careers in the league because they could play defense and they were rim protectors. Now the league, the whole thing has changed because now offense gets you money. So now, like Mike and Jamie said, these kids are developing skills at a younger age, and they're playing. They want to be on the court. You don't want to play defense and get fouled out because I'm not going to get to play. And then my next contract, they're going to hold it against me that I'm not scoring, even though I'm top tier defense. You know, I'm top tier defense, but I'm not going to get a big contract because, or I'll get traded because when push comes to shove, they're going to say I'm an offensive liability.
Oh, and listen too, just to piggyback on your question, if I had to pick who's the second GOAT of all times, guess who I'm going with? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
And here's again
why I'm going with Magic Johnson.
And I have no reservation. I have no hate towards whoever anybody chooses because you're choosing from the greats of the greats. Like Kareem, if you're looking at the most successful basketball player ever, Kareem was good from the time he was a school to the NBA. And he changed, like you think Jordan changed? He changed. He literally stopped dunking because they didn't want him dunking. They said it was illegal to dunk. He won 4 New York State championships or whatever, went to college. He didn't lose in college. He came to the NBA and gave the Bucks. People don't even know the Bucks have a championship in their history because they've been terrible for so long. But Kareem gave him a championship. Then he left and went to LA and ran off 4 more.
Yeah, he was one of the greatest, man.
When I say I can't just say this one was the greatest and you have to say you're better because everybody contributed something that made them great. Because Jordan talks, he says he was Dr. J to him.
Oh yeah, Dr.
Great. Like and even to this day, he can't tell himself I'm better than Dr. J because he said Dr. J, like I learned from Dr. J how to be who I am.
Exactly.
So, and same way Kobe and LeBron, they took from Jordan. LeBron personality is not like Jordan. Kobe's was.
Yeah.
So, but those guys looked at him, the AIs. So we got to look at it from the standpoint, like everybody, when I say the GOATs, because there's somebody that's going to influence the next generation. And you see, that's why that leads back to what you said earlier. Like you and Mike said, who is that next person that's going to take that mantle to be the best? And that leads into my next question, the mentality of our current athletes, because I think that goes into play. Whereas these kids grow up, they just want to score and play ball. KD is a perfect example. He's supremely talented, but he doesn't want all the other stuff that comes with the expectations, the responsibility. He just wants to play ball. Get my money, because if I score 27, grab 8, and have 5 assists, I can get 30 million a year. I don't need, because back in the day, Magic and it wasn't about stats. You had to show that you were the Michael. Every time he went on the court, it wasn't about his contract.
Oh
He
yeah.
wanted players to know that I'm the best. But nowadays, guys just supremely skilled. We have guys shooting threes, 4s shooting threes, 3s shooting threes. Back in the day, it was only the point guard and the shooting guard who were allowed to shoot on the arc. Now we have centers shooting threes. So the offense is taking over. So the mentality of these guys nowadays is like, I'm just going to get my numbers, get my money.
Yeah.
And when everybody comes with the expectations, a lot of them tend to shy away and be like, oh, because they've been told all their lives, because of AAU, you're great. You're number one prospect. You're better than everybody. But when they get to the league, they all of a sudden people start picking at them. Like, oh, you can't do this. You can't do that. And then now they're clutching their pearls and they're like, oh, how dare you talk about me like that? And I think the mentality nowadays,
different game, man.
A lot of guys just playing basketball. And that's why LeBron is still in the forefront, because he's like Jordan, he's like the Kareem, he's like the Dr. J's. He was like the Walt Clyde Fraziers of the world. They understood the position they were in, so they want to make sure we're all encompassing. You notice me. When I'm on the court, I give you the best effort. When I'm off the court, I'll do my interviews. I'll talk with the people. I'll carry myself a certain way. And a lot of these guys don't have that same mentality. It's just about get my numbers, get my. What you think, Turtle?
I think the mentality of a lot of these coming out after, like you said, it's about getting my numbers. I'm here to get paid, right? And especially we see now more so in the fallout of the pandemic, right? Because we see how much a lot of things off the court have been impacted, right? You can't do some of the endorsement deals or go to some of the places that you were before. So it's just like, I know this league money is short. I see how much money you guys are getting off the court. You look at people, and I know we talked about it earlier, as far as like off the court. You look at Magic, probably a great businessman off the court. Shaq, great businessman. Still went platinum and everything like that in music. You look at Jamal Mashburn, another great one, and he talked about in an interview how David Stern helped him get on, from the business side of things, as far as growing his business portfolio. So I think a lot of these guys now is just like, I want to get the W, I want to get the win. But we see the super team mentality come into play once again, right? It's been debated this guy, super team's been going on for a long time. Look who Bird played with, look who Magic played with, all these different things. But it wasn't so much behind the scenes, because we talked about that era, how listen, there's no way you would have had Magic and Bird talking about, this ain't working out in Boston or in LA. I think we should probably link up and go play over here. No, that wasn't going to happen. It definitely wasn't going to happen back then. So I think a lot of these athletes now, they want to get that W. I'm trying to get the chip. You look at what KD has done. You look at, I know Harden, moved via trade and stuff like that, but a lot of guys are not trying to stick it out for the long, like, listen, I'm here till the wheels fall off. And I think, and to a certain degree, I understand why some athletes feel that way, because the teams are not as loyal to the athletes. Like, listen, we'll dump you in a second. So, listen, you're not going to be loyal to me. I'm not going to be loyal to you. Why am I going to give you 20 years and so on and so forth if you're not willing to restructure and do these different things? It's very rare, right? We see that happen with, up until Brady left, but Brady did that for a long time to hold on. We saw Kobe hold on, to stay with the Lakers. The Lakers wanted to make sure, like, one and done. It's very rare you're going to find a one and done. And I say one and done in terms of like, this is the only team I'm going to be with, and I'm done after this. But it's very rare that you see one athlete stay with that. And I think a lot of these athletes are just really trying to make sure that, listen, I'm trying to secure myself for the next 20 years. So if it means I got to go to these different teams, I don't want to end up like Barkley. I don't want to end up like some bitter old guy or whatever, some bitter, like I didn't get a ring. Like, some of these guys are definitely ring chasers, because, again, following after the now / next LeBron, like, well, hey, look what LeBron did. I'm going to go do that. Look what this guy did. Monkey see, monkey do. So I'm going to go do that. That's what makes the most sense to me. And at the same time, it's like, okay, if there's no hope for me getting the championship here, at least I can go chase the check. So it's either one, it's CPC all the way around as far as I'm seeing it. It's either, chase the check or chase the championship. And if you can get one or the other, you're going to do that if you can't get both in the same city.
Okay. And Jamie.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You were gonna say?
And I'd say, and Ed brought up a point that a lot of these guys don't want to end up being this great player who never won. And I want to lead the argument that has to do everything with the media coverage, because back in the day, even if a player didn't win a championship, we respected the fact that they were good players. And I remember I was a fan of Terry Cummings, who played for the Milwaukee. He played ball.
Yeah. I remember Terry Cummings.
Win or lose, you knew who the great, because somebody had to lose, but you knew great athletes, great competition, and people would refer to them as great players. But then the whole thing changed around the Jordan time, where it became a validation of the championships validated your career. And I think a lot of these dudes came up seeing this, and it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me I was garbage because people saying I'm good, but they like, but did you win a championship in a team sport? I can see if I was a tennis player or a golf pro, but in a team sport, no matter how good I am, if the other 4 people next to me aren't that good, I can't win. So I think that plays into the mentality of, like Ed said, these guys deciding to take things in their own hands, and I'm going to go to a better situation. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think even with that, like you do hear that, like it's synonymous with Barkley and Carmelo, guys that got the points but never got the ring.
Yeah.
And then it also revolves back to the financial aspect too, because I thought Ed was talking about Barkley in a sense of, like, people were making fun of Barkley, like I want to say last year, because he walks funny, because he played on like bad knees and he played on bad hips and he did all those things. And then Barkley came back and was like, yeah, but my bank account is fat. It's fat though, And so it was like, you have the mentality is, look, I'm gonna be able to walk in 20 years, like without a hitch or without. And so there is definitely a mentality of protecting your own, going back to what we were saying about the branding and stuff like that.
Yep.
But me, like, I think it goes back to being a fan. Like, what kind of a fan are you? Because, like, for me, it's like, you got Brooklyn Nets now with KD, Kyrie, and then Harden bullied his way out of Houston. Mm-hmm. And so now they're like the clear-cut favorites. I think I have them as the winner of the championship. Like, I don't think anybody's going to beat them. But when I think about it, I'm like, man, like, I'm looking at it like, wouldn't it be great? This is why everybody should cheer for the Celtics, because wouldn't it be great if a team that drafted and tried to get these, free agents on the cusp of their careers, like, Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague, and try to bring some veteran players to defeat this seemingly overpowering movement where players can just dictate what's going to happen in an NBA season. And for me, it's like, I'm always going to root against that, even though I'm for, the player empowerment. I'm also like, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's gonna work, And unfortunately, more times than not, it probably will work. But I think there needs to be some type of, I don't know how the NBA can do it, but some type of way where it's like, okay, you can have that, but there needs to be something in place where it's like, you know what though? But those smaller market teams, because believe it or not, Boston may be the Celtics or whatever, but it's not like this attraction where it's like, man, everybody wants to come play for Boston because they got 17 champ. It's not like that. It's it's like really like a handful of teams that have that type of power. And so there needs to be something where it's like, I don't know, some type of benefit needs to come for those that are trying to do it through the draft, trying to have those mid-market contracts, trying to do those things and put them in position to possibly pull the upset and win. Unfortunately, that's not happening, and I don't know if it ever will, but that's what I'm rooting for.
I mean, I agree with you. It feels like it's unfair, but in my opinion, it's always been like every team that's won, the Lakers and the Celtics won championships. The Celtics, they have like, you look up in the rafters, there's no numbers left for players to have. Like good number is taken because it's retired. That means they have like 40-something Hall of Famers or some crazy number. It's like they had They had super teams. You know, it wasn't the Lakers had super teams as well. When you had Gail Goodrich and those people coming off the bench, and I think Gail Goodrich the year before when he played with Kareem and them, he was the leading scorer. Who was the other guy? He used to be the GM for the Clippers.
Barry?
Elgin Baylor was.
Oh, Baylor.
He
Okay.
was top tier shooting guard, and he decided I'm going to go play for the Lakers because the Lakers
always had talent, man.
well,
Always.
yeah, but he was on a terrible team, but he came to the Lakers and he won a championship. And I think the mentality and everything, it stems from that. They want control, and they've seen other people do it and make business decisions when it comes time to pay people to keep teams together. They make business decisions. So it's like, okay, if you guys are going to make business decisions, maybe it's time I make a business decision for what's best for me. What do you think, Mike?
I think it's the revenue streams are different now.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's more money flowing in. Back in the day, these athletes, they would look at a team and say, you know what? One person's getting paid on this team. That's it.
And that's another. Yep.
And so I'm not going over to this team and have to compete with another star just to get my money. I'm going to stay right here so I can get my money. So people had to secure their money where they were versus going to different teams. There just wasn't enough money to go around. Mm-hmm. Now with so much money flowing, these guys have so much they have so many different ways that they can make money, that their money's already set before they even step on the court. So
what's the veteran minimum is like $5 million a year, right?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And so now if you have a tier 1 or a tier 2 player and their money's already set, now the only thing that they should be focusing on now is not a super max, because chances are they're going to get a super max anyway. Especially if teams can give out 2 or 3 super max contracts now they're teaming up. They say, so what's left that's important? A championship. And that's why these guys are teaming up now and making it easier. So I think that the mentality is that I don't have to outshine somebody else to get my money. Let's just shine together. We already getting paid. Let's go out there and get these championships. So that's why I think the mentality has changed.
And that's a great point. I didn't think about that. Like back in the day, whoever to start, because you think about it, Michael Jordan he didn't make 20-something million until like the very end of his career.
They play for $2 or $3 million a year.
Right. He was making 2 or 3 million. Scottie Pippen signed a 10-year, $10 million deal. Yeah. So the money, we could say the money was different, but the money was still a lot back then. It's just the owners, they set the salary cap. Like, we only want to spend this much, but they were still making money. And I think once the players started doing the collective bargaining, they were like, wait a minute, we're getting less of the revenue and there's a lot of it. And you're telling us there isn't a lot. That's why we're making $3 million. But then all of a sudden, Michael Jordan was like, no, you could pay me $25 million. You can, because the money's there. You guys just aren't sharing it with us. And I think once the players started getting into the business side of thing and realize the money that they're paying you is not really what all they have. They just don't want to pay you that much. Once the players said, we're going to take 50% of the revenues, 50% of the sales, and got into the business side, then all of a sudden the money got greater. And there's a negative and there's a positive. The negative is some people are going to get money just because they have talent. And once they get the money, they're just going to relax because NBA contracts are guaranteed. And then there are those players the good ones who are going to be like, I want to keep making that money every year because it's a badge of honor to always get a max contract. So you get the LeBrons, the KDs, the Steph Currys. Like when they're up for contracts, there's no negotiating. It's just that's the number. So I think that's the positive. Like players have changed. They've got more business savvy about their profession, so to speak.
Yeah, and the you know the what do you call it? Like the unions. You know, the basketball player unions. They stuck together. You know what I mean? They like baseball too. Like they threatened, and when they threatened that they were going to strike, it was like they really going to do it, you know? And that ended up paying off. And a lot of these guys nowadays, they don't make that kind of money if those sacrifices weren't made back then, you know? And so that's kind of like my hope and wish for NFL players, because it leaves a foul taste in my mouth when, you know, guys like not to switch to football, but you know, the Vinoy who just came from Miami, you know, he just had a contract last year with Miami, you know, and they just figured out a way to say, you know what, they took it, they shredded up, they were like, we're done here. And to me, it's like that you know, I don't like that, you know, and so
I don't understand how that's ethical. Like,
it's horrible.
If you sign a contract it's binding.
Exactly.
But it's only binding if they decide they don't want to do it anymore. So it's like, I look at football, like that's why they always say it's about the signing bonus and the guaranteed money.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not about it's not about the total contract. They can put $400 million, but if only 50 million is guaranteed. But I think that's more of a PR move. Like, we're going to put the pressure on you, that we're showing people that, we're giving you 50, 80 million dollars, when in all actuality, no,
not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
No, you're not really paying that money. That's crazy. But that's my opinion. Like, I think today's players is just a lot smarter, and they've learned from all the players and the things, all the 30 for 30s about people going broke. Like, you don't hear about a lot about guys who are in the league since like mid 2000s and they're out, and you don't hear them saying, "Oh, I'm broke now." You hear a lot of people saying, "I'm investing in this," because as they've been coming up, they had the Magic Johnsons, they had the Michael Jordan as a blueprint, and the LeBrons and Kobe's right in front of them, telling them, "Hey, man, get your money to make more money, because at some point this is going to end." Exactly. You may not be LeBron and play 18 years at the max money. Like, that's amazing in itself. Him and Jordan, they were still getting max money later on in their careers. A lot of dudes had to take a step down, but I think a lot of players, they've learned from that stuff, but a lot of them have gotten lazy and just want that money and don't want everything that is all encompassing. They want the adulation of being, "Oh, he's nice," but you just score a lot of. You don't really affect the game. You don't take a leadership role. You're just kind of like, "I'm here to score, get buckets, and we win." That's all. But you're not really, "I'm going to make sure this team is ready. I'm going to be the leader." We don't see a lot of that from guys nowadays, and it's scary. Like, once LeBron leaves, KD's supposed to be the next, but in all actuality, KD's like maybe 4 years younger than LeBron.
4 or 5, yeah, 4 or 5 years.
So it's not like he's a spring chicken. It's like him and Steph are like 31, 32, but everybody, when LeBron was 32, that's why I always say, like, it's unfair comparisons. When he was 32, people said he's over the hill, and these young boys are going to come get him, but now these young boys are in the same predicament. Who do we have coming up? Like, I don't see anybody in the league that I can say, when LeBron, KD, and Steph are gone, that they're going to be that face of the league. People want Zion, but he doesn't have any charisma. Like, that's part of the team. You got to have some sort of charisma.
That is part of it, yeah.
A lot of dudes. What do you think, Terrell?
I think that, man, when it's a full spectrum, or I should say you have to bring the full package to the table, right?
Yep.
Like, LeBron works for one, either you love him or you hate him, on and off the court, something, because you have to be polarizing to a degree to be the next, right? Because LeBron was dubbed the king and all these different things when he was in high school, right? He's going to high school, he's driving a Hummer, Jay-Z's coming to games, they're talking about summer league this, summer league that. Everybody's going to watch the Irish play when he was in high school, and how crazy, it was things that was basically like folklore, if you will. So I don't see anybody out there right now that has that aura about them when you're like, "Oh, he's coming." Not even he's in the building. You just know this guy's coming to your town. Where this is sold out a week before this guy shows up. Where, like, every game looks like an iPhone or Jordan sneaker release, right? For people waiting to get into the game. There's nobody. I don't see anybody out there like that right now. There's guys who are like, okay, you're moving the needle a little bit, but not to the point where it's just like this guy. Like, Kobe was that guy, right? You knew Kobe was like, this guy's a straight killer. And I think even though LeBron's not a killer, LeBron, his physical stature and the gift that he possessed, put him in the game like that. Shaq was another one like that. Like you said, with Zion is not charismatic enough off the court. Kind of like a gentle giant in a sense. So he's not, he doesn't give me that, that's the guy. Even with Luka, right? Luka's game is good, but Luka doesn't have that. To me, he doesn't give me that.
I don't see him
that
aging well.
like
I don't see him aging well. I don't see
even the Greek Freak a little bit. Some people might have told us, the Greek Freak's gonna be the one. Don't see it. I don't see a guy who in an interview you can laugh with him, you're gonna joke with him, he's gonna be polarizing. You step up the court and say, "Hey, I'm gonna go get those Greek Freak sevens." Like, there's nobody like that. Nobody you're gonna be sitting down with where, he'd be great for a marketing campaign. He's all encompassing. Whereas, like, listen, whether he's the villain or the hero. Because even LeBron, right? LeBron wrote that whole villain wave, right? When people were talking about this guy's a villain, he left, look how he did us, so on and so forth. Nike did a whole campaign behind that, LeBron being a villain, and he rode with that, right?
The whole league ran with that.
Right. Everybody ran with that. LeBron's the villain. So everywhere when the Heat came together, all of that. There's nobody out there right now. And I'm looking at college. I don't follow college basketball as much as I used to, but I'm looking at college basketball to see like, okay, who's that guy? Who's that guy when you're like, okay, this is somebody we should watch out for. And I know we've seen some kids here and there. I remember we were watching Zion videos 4 or 5 years ago and saying like, okay, he's gotten to the league, he's doing his thing, but he's still not that polarizing. Like every night, we got to come see Zion, and I think it's gonna. I don't know. We might have to go, like Dr. was talking about. We will probably have to go into a lull for a little while, where it's gonna have to be a quiet situation. I kind of feel like we're about to go into that period. Celtics fans can relate, and I say this because his name came up earlier. Len Bias, right? Len Bias is supposed to be that the bridge in the gap. It's supposed to be that transition from Bird to Len Bias, and then we're gonna get Reggie Lewis, but when Reggie Lewis and Len Bias died, that set us back like
I forgot.
Like a good 15, 20 years. Easily.
One of my favorite players. Let's add that Reggie Lewis. I forgot about him. I forgot about Reggie Lewis. 35.
Right. So I think that we don't have. So I think the way Celtics fans felt when we lost Len Bias and Reggie Lewis in that span of time is how the NBA is going to end up being. Like right after LeBron leaves, unless some magical person pops out of somewhere now, who's on nobody's radar, somebody they find overseas or wherever. I think it's going to end up being, we're going to be like, okay, we got to wait. It's going to be a minute.
Yeah, that next person might not even be in high school yet.
Yeah,
it might not.
True.
We might be waiting for a long, long time.
That person should, like you all said, that person should be KD. Kawhi is too quiet. Other person I could think about is Steph.
But Steph is going up. He's right there with LeBron. So it's like, but if Steph was maybe 6-7 years younger, maybe. Yeah. But like the league right now, you look at it, there's a lot of good players. And there's a lot of players who've been coming in the league was supposed to be the next. And I would always, but all you're showing me is them dunking. I don't see them doing anything but. And when they get to the league, it's like you can tell right away, like that guy may not have it. I'm closely looking at dude Anthony Edwards down there in Minnesota.
Yeah.
He's going to
you got to keep an eye on LaMelo too.
Yeah, LaMelo's balling.
He's doing things that at his age that he shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if it's sustainable. I'd like to take a look at him the next 2-3 years because, like I said early on, Luka had me fooled until I figured out who he was, and I'd like to see LaMelo, but he might be something.
With Luka, I was kind of like. He's good, but he's the type of player, nothing to do with his race or anything, but it's just like eventually his game, because he's not, he doesn't have the physical gifts. At some point, that stuff is going to tail off. Your physicality is going to tail off.
What I'll give, but the thing about Luka though is he has that international thing. Like I want to say he had the most votes from the All-Stars. Like he was up there, and it's because people are voting from Europe for him.
Yep.
And so. If there is somebody, like if we had to choose somebody right now because of that, I would say Luka, because he has like a really big international, backing.
Yeah. And also, I'll give him that from the skill wise and just, continuing that, I'm kind of skeptical. But when you see him on the court, same thing I brought up with LaMelo, when they play, I want to watch them play because I know they're not just going to score. They're going to do something.
He could pass.
He could pass.
Luka could pass.
Threw it over his head. Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah. But I watched LaMelo do the same thing. And I think you look at them, even though they're stars, it's like, that's why I'm a LeBron, I'm a Jordan fan too. Because Jordan, at a certain point, he started passing the ball. He realized when I get these other guys going, they feel good. That way, at the end of the game, when I take over, they got no problem with it. Because the whole time I was getting them to rock. We were moving, but when it's crunch time, I'm taking over, and I agree with that. Jordan had that.
That's my knock on Tatum. Like Tatum is an incredibly gifted player. Like he can literally score anywhere, but he doesn't have what those younger like Luka, Donovan Mitchell. It's like if you bring the double team, they're gonna make you pay for it. Because they know like it's almost like they're thinking ahead of, whereas Tatum is more of a reaction person.
Uh-huh.
So, you show him something and he's going to try and figure it out in the moment.
Mhm.
Like Luka, LaMelo, Donovan. I really like Donovan Mitchell a lot.
Okay.
But those guys are like, he reminds me of D Wade. But they just know, like, I'm watching you, and if you cheat for 1 second, I know exactly where this ball is going, and that's where I'm hoping that Tatum could get his game too. And when he does, like,
because he's only like
Yeah.
what, 23?
he's 22. No, he's 23. Yeah, he just turned 23. But if he can figure that out, man, like, honestly, I don't see why he couldn't be one of the top 5 players in the game.
Mhm.
But he has to figure that out first.
My only problem with Luka is he looks like he's about 3 Twinkies away from losing another step, and he can't exactly afford to lose too many more steps. He's slow as it is.
Yeah,
And he's young. He's young and looking like he
That's what I said. He doesn't look like he's going to age well, because the knock on a lot of European players is their off-season training isn't like it is in the US. They go back home and they chill, and then they might do something, but he's not there lifting weights trying to change the physical structure of his body. He's fine the way he is. He was successful in Europe for all these years, and he's still successful in the NBA.
I never thought of that. Yeah.
So it's like their mindset is, I'm going to keep doing. Whereas the US players, they're like, oh, I got to go get these muscles up. Like Tatum, he was real skinny, but you look at him now, you see his shoulders. Like they changed the physical look of their bodies to go along with their games. And I think Tatum will be good. Donovan Mitchell is there. I like LaMelo. I like Anthony Edwards down, because now that they let him just be himself and attack, he's dropping 40 points. You see it in him. He wants to be good. He wants you to notice him. Like, you can tell the players like that. I remember when Wiggins came in the league, people were anointing him because he had a good
vertical.
He was at the combines doing well. It was the same thing with that dude, again, for Mike's team, the Cavs, when they drafted Bennett, because he had a good combine. And I'm like, but you watch the games, he wasn't that good. But because he had a good vertical and his size, all of a sudden he's deemed a great player. You got to want to be a great player is what I think. And when you see those players, you can tell right away, like, that guy wants to be great. He wants you to notice him and all that stuff. So that's my feelings on that. So where were we at? We're at an hour and 43 minutes. So we're about to wrap it up. This has been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, good conversation.
Hey, Litton, can I say one more thing about football?
Yeah, if it's really the Steelers, though.
Oh, no. I was going to tell Mike. No. But it's a good. Your team, when the Browns, in my opinion, the best season that I could remember was that year when you talk about breaking hearts, is when they lost that game to the Raiders. Man, the Browns could have went to the bowl that year.
Oh, is that with what's his
Brian
name?
Sight, Mike Davis.
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that was the Browns' year to come out the AFC that year.
Yep.
What, 81?
Yeah, and they had a couple chances. I mean, they could have come out against Denver. I mean, Ernest Biner's fumble is what took me into a tailspin and said I may not want to be a Cleveland sports fan ever again. There's been a number of ways, but this is probably the best. This past year is the best they looked in a long time.
Yeah, they got a good nucleus, but again, we'll be back next year.
Who?
The steel curtain.
You mean steel blinds? The steel blinds? Y'all need to. First of all, I'm gonna go on my Steeler rant right now.
The
Steelers. I respect the Steelers because they're always competitive. That's what makes football great, having competitive teams. But you guys got to get rid of Ben, man. It's time. It's time, bro. Like, and then your whole belief system and not playing the top tier wide receivers. AB was trouble, but he proved, like, he made Juju a star. Now you guys don't even want to give him no money. Like, I think your time is done.
Yeah, he's coming back for a year.
Who?
Juju, I think. That's what I heard.
He's coming back.
He should have went to Kansas City, bro. To be honest, he wouldn't, because he's going back there to try to prove he's a number one receiver. He's not. Your success predicated.
That was surprising for him to go back. It really was, because
he's coming back for a year.
Yeah, like saying I was surprised at that. I was like, move on. Kansas City gave you a chance. You could have been there with Tyreek Hill and you would have put up numbers. That's that loyalty thing.
Yeah.
People say you got to be loyal, but the team wasn't loyal to you. If they were loyal to you, they would have gave you a 3-year contract.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So the writing's on the wall, you know. But we're going to wrap it up. This is going to be our last question. You know, let's go out on a sentimental good note. Let's go. What was your favorite sports moment? Let's start with Mike. Mike, because I know this is going to hurt you because you're a Cleveland fan. Did you guys have a good sports moment?
Oh, you're right.
Well, so I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna toss it to James because I'm not talking to you for the rest of the show.
Was it Jordan hitting it over Elo? Was that a great sports moment for you?
Understood. I appreciate you having me join the podcast, Lynn. I got something for you after this show.
What about you, Ed?
Inside Out Uncut featuring Mike and Lynch. Anyway.
Yep.
And there's way too many. You know, matter of fact, I'm gonna take it back. And this is more personal than anything. Let me see. High school, 1994, Glasgow over Hedrickon.
Oh, so we take it personal. Okay.
That was one of my favorite sports moments. Being there for that game.
Basketball, football.
Basketball. Glasgow over Hedrickon basketball. Senior year. Definitely one of my favorite sports moments. And I think about it because I know how much it meant. Not even more so to me, because you know that was my first only year playing ball. But I know how much it meant to Chris B. Because I know how he was trying to get over the hump playing Hedrickon, and the next day when I saw him in school walking around with that basketball with the biggest smile on his face, like
I remember that.
I finally beat Goliath. Like we finally did it. It felt like we won the championship that night, but I felt so good for Chris B that night. That was definitely one of my favorite sports moments. And obviously the Patriots winning the 6th championship make them one of the greatest franchises of all time as well.
Yeah, greatest franchise of all time. Yes, I agree with that. How about you, Mr. Bentley?
Let's see. Besides my Steelers winning 6, I'll go to an event where I was live, right?
Yeah.
I was at the in the Superdome. Jordan hit the shot against Georgetown.
You in the Superdome?
My uncle got 4 tickets for $20.
Oh, wow. $4 for $20?
Yeah, because back then they had the consolation game, right? And the Louisville fans and the Houston fans, a lot of them went home and sold tickets. So he was able to get 4 tickets.
Oh, that's cool. Jordan hitting. So that's where you got introduced to the greatness of Michael Jordan.
Well, I pretty much went that whole year in '81 saying his name wrong, calling him Jimmy Jordan and Michael Black because they had the other point guard. Michael. Is it Michael Black?
Yeah, no.
So I was saying his name wrong the whole season, but yeah.
Okay. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm over here racking my brain trying to pick one, but it's kind of a tie. I would say Bill Miller when he hit the base hit up the middle and brought home David Roberts, and we avoided the sweep. That was pretty epic because that kind of set the tone for the comeback, coming back down 3-0 to the Yankees. But I would also say the Super Bowl field goal, the first Patriots championship. When that kick was good, I just remember driving all around Providence and just running into everybody and just it was a party everywhere I went, and everybody was just like, we did it. And so I would have to say the first championship, when it was good, it was like, man, cloud 9 all day long.
Okay. For me, it's sort of along the line with you, Jamie. It was the Patriots' first Super Bowl. It was the Celtics winning with KG, Paul Pierce. It was the Red Sox winning the first one with the knuckleheads back in the day. Not because they won, but because it was sentimental in the fact my grandmother, Veronica Moore, she was a big Celtics fan. Immigrated from Trinidad. We'd go to Boston to visit her, and she would have, opening day in the newspaper. They would have all the schedule, all the Patriots games. They'd have it for the Red Sox games. So whenever we go visit her in Boston, in Roxbury, would be a Celtics game on. She didn't like Georgetown. She'd watch college ball, but she was always a New England sports fan, and they didn't win anything except for the Celtics in '86. For a long time, she didn't have nothing to cheer for. So she was like, I hope to see the Patriots win something before I was gone. So when she passed away, me and my brother used to always be like, man, what if Granny was here? So when the Patriots won the first one, we were at school, Clark Atlanta, Mr. Bentley. We were at Heritage Commons. We had just moved into new apartment buildings. And the whole time, everybody knew me and my brother as the dudes from New England, because nobody could deny it. We always up front. We'd have Red Sox hats. We did never deny where we were from. So when they kicked that field goal and they won, we were under a little liquid courage, but we opened that door and ran around the whole complex screaming. And all of a sudden, there were hundreds of people running with us. We were like, who are you? Like, we were like, I didn't know you were even from New England. Like, you from Boston all of a sudden? I thought you were from California, you know? But that was one of the greatest moments, the all of the Boston championships, because we were like, man, my grandmother wished she had gotten to see this, but she was the one who kind of ingrained that in us, just to be fans of the New England sports, so to speak. So the Celtics winning was one of the greatest feelings, because I haven't seen one since Bird, you know, the Red Sox coming back, and the fact that and even the Bruins, believe it or not, black man, I watched hockey growing up, and the Bruins, I loved watching the Bruins play. So when they won their championship, I was like, man, I feel bad Cam Neely and all those guys never got one, but those were like my New England sports moments were like some of my greatest sports moments, just because of the sentimentality of my grandmother not being able to see them, and the fact that they did win. So that was some of my greatest sports experiences.
That's cool.
Yep.
Cool.
So we've reached that point where we're saying it was a great show. I thank you, gentlemen, for being here for the first ever episode of the Inside Out podcast. I want to thank my guests today, Pretty Eye Mike Manning, my man Jamie Espinal, Ed Turtle, Curse the Hillside Strangler up there, the man himself, the legend, Uncle B, devastating dominator on the crossfader. We'd like to thank everybody who joined us today for being there, being fans, and helping us get this off the ground. Hopefully soon my little big bro, Big D, will be on the show. And in the future, we're definitely going to have our guests back on. So we want you guys to stay connected, stay watching us and what's going on. As you can see scrolling at the bottom, all the different ways you can contact us. Here's Instagram, Inside Out Podcast. Here's Facebook, the Inside Out Podcast page. You can check us there when we stream live and all for more information. And also you can catch us on Twitter as well. So we're going to try to have all our shows every Sunday live going from there. And then the next day will be out for the replay. So I want to thank all my guests today for being here, everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time on the Inside Out Podcast. Thank you, and have a blessed day. That was a good job, fellas. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Good job to you.
Thank you.
Good job. All right.